Our dear guests and dear viewers, fellow citizens, a good morning to you and welcome back to another episode of the Inter-University Debate Show. My name is Sharon Mukisa, your host for this particular episode. Now with me I have guests who are coming from Mbarara University of Science and Technology. We are going to tackle our topic today, which is the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961. And we're going to look at the 30 years of the Constitution as well. In this discussion, you're going to talk about the factors that have led to lack of credibility, the role of the EC, and we're going to talk about whether the EC is independent or inclined to a certain position. So in no particular hierarchy or order, allow me to introduce our guests today. First of all, we have Lumu Vincent. You're very welcome to the show.
The privilege is mine.
Okay, we are happy to have you. And next we have Edward Muhanji. We are happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Sharon. Nice to be here.
All right, next we have the lady on the panel today who is Joy Elizabeth Ntono. We are very happy to have you.
My honor to be here.
And lastly, but definitely not least, we have Ibrahim Semugoma. We are very happy to have you on the show.
The honor is all mine.
Okay, let's dive right into it. Well, we need to understand what our history is and how Uganda got to democracy today. We need to understand what are those significant milestones that we have taken as a country to get to where we are today. So taking us through our history and making us understand how far we have come is Ibrahim.
Well, actually about the history, to give a better insight about the whole topic, I would rather give it to my colleague to actually take us through the history, Vincent.
Oh, okay, Vincent, please take us through.
Just as introduced, the name is Lumu Vincent. When it comes to the history of the election of the country, Uganda, we can't really see that, we can't say that it has been its best because it has always been having turmoil and wrangles whenever elections take place. Basically, to start with the very first election that happened before independence in 1961, where we see UPC and DP being the major political parties within that election, which was basically organized in order to arrange the country for independence. We see DP coming up as the winner, but still, even in so doing, we see Buganda not being happy with whatever transpired in those elections, and they actually chose to also form a political party, which was the Kabaka. This was basically to bring out the interests of the Buganda. And then from there, when the country got independence in 1962 and elections were carried out, the Kabaka chose to make an alliance with UPC in order for them to secure a win against the DP. So it was literally one man versus two. And we see that they actually came up winners, getting 37 seats over the 20 that were secured by the DP, which was by then led by Benedicto Chiwanuka. And on top of that, when UPC and Kabaka came into power, the position of president was literally not holding any power, but rather the position of prime minister, which was held by Apollo Milton Obote. But later on, we see that Buganda fell out with the UPC in that they came to so many contradictions. We see that actually Obote went on to even attack the kingdom in 1966. And in so doing, that's when we get the Buganda crisis, where the king gets exiled, Mutesa II gets exiled to England, and then he goes on to enact a constitution, the 1966 constitution that served up to 1967. And in that constitution, he wanted to literally centralize the governance of Uganda in a way that he reduced the power of the kingdoms. Since Buganda had a semi-autonomous, it was kind of a federal, it actually went on to lose that position. And then the minor kingdoms like Busoga were literally reduced to almost districts. But as time went on and we reached 1967, the Pigeonhole Constitution was enacted, which was literally not agreed upon by the legislature, but rather they just found it within their seats and it was already signed, so it was passed literally by Obote, but not by the legislature. And In so doing that, he literally abolished all kingdoms in Uganda. So we see that also serving as a major division among the Ugandans themselves, and there was no election that was taken on during his regime. He literally ruled using the military. So when it comes to 1971, that's when Idi Amin Dada goes on to organize a coup against him when he had gone for a Commonwealth conference in Singapore. So Amin chose to take over power basically because of what he had seen going wrong in the country, and also maybe he used it as a preemptive strike since there were a lot of issues going on within the government, and maybe Obote was also planning to eliminate him. So he chose to do it as a preemptive, so he took over power, meaning he became the president. And in so doing, he actually abolished the 1971 constitution, so he ruled without any constitution. And in so doing that, he was basically an authoritarian rule. His ideas, whatever he says is what is right. So in so doing that, still Ugandans weren't basically happy. And we see him being also overthrown in 1979. And after his overthrow, some few leaders came up, but also still not peacefully, up to when we see that 1986, that's when we have general elections. And people like Yusuf Lukonge Lule, people like Bina Issa played part in that election. But still, Obote emerged as a winner. But then a lot of issues came up saying the vote was rigged, this and that. We do not believe this is right. There was a lot of voter intimidation before the elections took place. So Ugandans were still not okay with it. And once Obote took power, he literally did not allow any more elections to take place. So this led to actually another coup, which led to his overthrow by Tito Okello. By then, he was the leader of that coup, overthrowing him, though still no election, up to when Museveni, His Excellency now, comes and then takes over power, also still through a coup. So we see that peaceful transition was literally not a thing when you talk about Uganda's history in terms of transition of power. So when the president also took over power, he thought, or I can say he looked at political parties as a cause of division amongst the Ugandans, which we must say might be a correct ideology. So he chose to abolish that and choose, if elections are to take place, they were based on individual personalities running also still under the same umbrella of NRM. So later on, as time went on, they went on to organize the first general elections, which he won convincingly, though the voter turnout by then wasn't really that much high. Though we see the voter turnout now going on to increase when it comes to the 2001 general elections. And then when we come to 2005, where basically we see that the political parties are coming back now into play. Though still, from there on, we see that a lot of issues come up when it comes to elections. There is always a lot of military force. There is a lot of arrests carried out during the campaigns. So we can't really say that we are having still a peaceful transition, much as it is taking place through election. We can't call it peaceful. Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. You have cited that back in the day, may I understand you right, back in the day during elections time, there were also issues of voter intimidation and violence and such things happening at that time. So it's similar to what is happening now. I thought maybe these are new things that we are seeing right now.
They say history always repeats itself. So we can't basically say that there is anything new that we are going to do that has not been done way back then. So it's the same thing that is happening right now. That still, even in those days, people were taken as prisoners just because of their political ideologies. It was seen in Obote's regime, it was seen in Amini's regime, where there was even no voting at all. But just you may are coming up with a different political ideology that maybe criticizes their rule, you would be seen as an intimidation to their overall authority. So they still could do that kind of intimidation and stuff like that. You know, you may not be intimidated directly, but what you see being done to someone is enough to intimidate you as a person. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Vincent. And moving on to Edward, I'd like to understand, he has explained to us, he has given us a vivid picture of where Uganda has come from and how democracy has been like in Uganda, through the ups and downs, through all the issues that we have faced as Ugandans through elections. So I'd like to understand what are the factors that contribute to the lack of credibility in elections today? Because there are people that are doubting the system, there are people that have lost trust in the system. So why do you think that is?
All right, I think to understand that question better, it's better for a viewer to first understand the whole idea of what an election looks like. Yeah, because an election majorly serves to seek things like representation, accountability for the voter, and maybe democracy in itself, right? So it means you only achieve those ideas when you allow people or citizens to actively and willingly engage in elections. So as he has told you from what he has given to us, I think just the difference is that right now we live in modern day wars, I can call them that. Why? Because right now maybe we may not be seeing wars and things like that, but either way, people still face similar challenges. For example, to start with, unlike a war that happened in those days during Amin's and Obote's regime, right now we face maybe I can call them legal wars. How? Because right now you see the whole idea of democracy has been tampered with, beginning from the Electoral Commission, right? Because everywhere you go to, even my own grandmother down there, she'll tell you right now it is the player that chooses the referee of the match. It basically looks like the EC is chosen by the person who is going to run for presidency or for any other office. It basically looks like at one point maybe people feel like we already know the winner before we do vote. So the whole idea of that basically puts the idea of integrity of these elections at stake, whereby people feel like the EC is no longer independent, right? So it serves to benefit the interests of the person or the people that put it. So to make it much more clear, I think I can tell you that yes, multi-party systems exist in a country like Uganda, but we have seen one biggest challenge whereby we have glorified one single political party, in that we have given it much more powers to understand that they can do each and everything that maybe they feel like doing.
What do you mean do each and everything?
Yeah.
Because if you say we've given them power, I mean they are the ruling party. It is the party that was elected.
Yeah, true. They have done that. Okay, they are the ruling party, that is true. But the whole idea of us, why I say us, we, because if I have already told you that an election seeks to do things like accountability and representation, right? It means we are the people that put it there. It basically means if people are not willing to come up and maybe say particular ideas, it means we give it authority to do some things. How is that true? About the whole idea of integrity is when you run an electoral system whereby we see the EC or Electoral Commission is sidelining somewhere, whereby people are questioning it before the election and nothing is done, it means we're already running a flawed system. That, to be clear, for example, right now before elections, people have been complaining. Observers have been talking about the whole idea of Electoral Commission, but up to now, nothing has been changed, right? It now means that we are most likely going to see no change. Why?
Maybe, Edward, would you cite for us some instances and some examples of why you say the EC is sidelining with...
Oh, true.
Yeah.
I can give an example in the recently conducted elections, that was 2021. Yes, we saw allegations whereby people were claiming that Honorable Simon Byabakama was a person of the ruling party, right? To an extent that these are people in the system, right? Once you see that happening in a nation, once you see people talking like that, it means, remember, the whole power or autonomous sovereignty belongs to people. Once you see these allegations maturing and becoming intense, right, any other democratic system, you have to seek a way of addressing them, right? So once you don't address that idea of allegation, it means you assert it maybe to be, to a given extent, true. Like you give people authority to take it as true. And that in itself makes these elections to lose out on credibility. Why? Because you have not addressed the logical flaws or the logical allegations that are coming from the citizens in itself. So the first idea is the lack of independency of the Electoral Commission. I think that's the biggest challenge right now. But now too, there is a very, very big role that the state has played towards suppressing the opposition, right? Because we have seen on several occasions whereby the opposition lacks say how everything they do must be approved. But approval in itself is okay, but approval comes to a given extent. It basically means that opposition is put in a position that it can only do things that only and only align with the interests of the ruling party. I think democratically, that's not right. You achieve democracy when you allow the opposition to do similar things that you are doing. At a point in time that you don't allow the opposition to use the same road you're using, to use the same rally center that you're using, not to use the same TV station that you're using, you put them in a position whereby you are squeezing them to a wall, right? They lose out on the whole idea of engagement. It basically looks like you're going to run an election whereby maybe the opposition has not visited given places, or some people don't know about the whole idea of the manifesto of the opposition. That is the biggest challenge that Uganda is facing right now, whereby the opposition has been continuously suppressed. They lack that kind of sovereign power to run, to campaign, to bring out their ideas clearly. But now, lastly, we have, as Vincent has told you, the idea of militarization. I think this is becoming intense in Uganda's electoral system, whereby last elections we saw a big impact of military towards election. Or even this year, during the Kaunti by-elections, just a by-election whereby you saw, I can put it in quotes, a full barracks being deployed in Kawempe North, right? So once these local people see a full army coming down just for a by-election, it basically means that I can call that intimidation. Some people are like have that phobia of seeing guns around them. I mean, like, why would you run an election by you being surrounded by guns? Like, it puts your own peace at stake. So we're having a high rate or a high risk of voter suppression if at all we keep seeing things like army coming into elections, yet we have things like the police in itself can do that particular role. So the biggest things that are affecting the entire credibility of Uganda's elections, I can call them majorly three. Independence of the EC, as I've told you, militarization of politics, and suppression of the opposition. Then to a lesser extent, this is becoming rampant, however, is the idea of monetization of elections. Ugandans right now, I think what we have achieved or what we have fought for is making ourselves vulnerable. How? Because I think money can solve my problem, money can determine my vote. It's true, money can solve our problems, right? But now once you put yourself in a position whereby you think money can determine your election, elections lose credibility. I can give an example. Credibility means that you're voting a leader that you think is going to do your best interests, right? So I'm voting you because I've seen your history, I've seen what you've done, not because you've given me 5,000 shillings to buy me alcohol out there, or even maybe to give me a one-day meal that can even sustain my children back home. So monetization of politics is becoming rampant, and the government in itself has failed to regulate that. Why? We are seeing money flowing so much during election time. I give an example. I can give an example down there where we come from, this is of Mbarara, Rukunjiri, Mbarara, where you see a politician openly coming and they're giving voters money, right? So this is a weakness that is affecting both stakeholders. How? The state in itself and the citizens. Because the state has failed to regulate the idea of money flow during elections and maybe putting strict regulations on that. But two, us as voters, we have made ourselves very vulnerable in that money can solve our problems. So once you put factors like that to influence your vote, it means elections lose out on credibility. We no longer vote people who can do us good work, but we vote people because of influence. I've been influenced by a gun. I've been influenced because if I be in opposition, I'm going to be suppressed. I may never speak up. I may even be killed. I may even be jailed. So I have to vote a given leader because I fear jail. I care because my mom is going to cry because she's going to see me being whipped or wagged on streets because I'm supporting opposition. That's suppression. I'm voting because maybe I'm poor. So I need the 5K to buy me salt or even alcohol and stuff like that. So all these factors have seen the credibility of Ughanda's elections going at stake.
Thank you very much, Edward. That was very vivid. That was really a good example, passionate example of what exactly is wrong with elections today. So thank you very much. Joy, would you have anything to add on to any factors that have led to lack of credibility in the election system?
Thank you so much, Sharon, for the opportunity granted. Yeah, Eddie has mainly talked about four factors that he thinks are majorly affecting the credibility of the free and fair elections that Ugandans are supposed to have. So the idea of the elections came all the way back from 1995 when they were making the constitution that was in place from the inquiries that were made from the people, like what do they want the constitution to have, and the idea of democracy all came from there, whereby Ugandans have to vote for their leaders. That to say what you mentioned about representation, that's what elections are supposed to have. So the factors that he has mentioned are things that are vividly seen, that are vividly evident and seen in the current in Uganda's elections as a whole. But what he didn't mention, I'm going to highlight on that. I think the major things also affecting the credibility of elections are things to do with also voters' ignorance. Like voters do not really know like what to do. I think this goes back all together to the Electoral Commission itself as a whole. Like what duties does it have to do as an Electoral Commission, but has been neglecting for a while. And when you look at things to do like voters lacking the sufficient knowledge to know what a free and fair election looks like, our voters then do not have the mandate then to go to a polling station or to vote for a person they think is credible for them to represent them. These are factors that are affecting the democracy of a country as a whole. The Electoral Commission as a whole is supposed to carry out things to do with voter education. I personally, I cannot tell you that the people down there in the village who do not have media, because as we're having a conversation like the way we are, when I inquired that about him, he told me things to do like the media, things are passed on the media, that is okay. First, we can receive them. Things are passed through, they are passed through like when you reach the offices of the Electoral Commission, the things are written there. But how do you expect like a person who is deep down in the village then to know that? I think the Electoral Commission is supposed to deploy people because of the budgets they all pass. That is a lot of money. They're supposed to deploy people who are supposed to teach these people who are even deep down in the village to be educated about elections themselves. This lead to the low turn-ups of voters at the polling stations. Even when you look at that, I think now that is not democratic-wise because a lot of people will be left out. The low turn-ups then mean that a few people are going to be represented and the others are going to be left out. When you go to the next point to do things with manipulation of the constitution because it's one. When you look at this, the constitution has been manipulated. I think the recent one is 2005, where the age limit was eliminated. Are these things go on affecting the Electoral Commission itself? Because when you say that the age limit is eliminated, like, what do you mean, like someone who was supposed to rule for 2 terms, now someone who is supposed to rule for 2 terms and then the other people can also bring their ideologies on board, now can rule the numerous number of terms they want? this thing is sidelined because also the Electoral Commission, instead of it like focusing then on other people the people who would have better ideologies, you realize that because people have been in power, the 2 times a person is in power, that is good enough for a person to bring their ideologies on board or to show us any significant change that a person then has to bring up for a country. But when you extend like, by the time they counted like 2 terms, that is good enough for a person to do all that. But if you exceed all those number of terms, it doesn't then mean that you're going to like representation is now as a whole, or you're going to bring your ideologies on board. This then means that you just want a position for yourself or to satisfy your needs. You just want to be self-sufficient, but you're not feeling for the people who voted you, or the people who voted you into power, or you're supposed to serve the people themselves. You get. The other thing that is commonly happening right now are things to do with media suppression. This is really true because when you look at it, a lot of media personalities have, that's why I think conferences of media personalities are held, where they hold conferences to fight for the rights of the media personalities. Media is really key when it comes to the electoral processes, right from the rallies they hold, things to do with nominations. These are people who are supposed to inform the people themselves. But at a point in time where the media is suppressed, they're not allowed to go into some areas. That means that where the areas that they're not allowed to go into, those areas are then dark. What do I mean? By the time you do not want people outside to be exposed to what you are doing, that means these people then will not have the right to know what you are doing. That means they will be left in the dark, and people have the right to know about all these. When you look at all that, many media personalities have been brutally injured, in that many of them end up in hospitals. Many media personalities even do not want to go in the field to cover up such events because they know that is all tragedy to them. No one wants to lose their life. Everyone has a right to life. So in all the electoral process that is then supposed to happen, the rights of the media personalities have to be respected, because it is also a key factor when it comes to things to do with the electoral process and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joy. You and Edward have highlighted some of the key issues that are wrong with the credibility of the elections today. And one of them Edward mentioned the Electoral Commission and how it is not independent and how it may be inclined to a certain party. So I'd like to understand from Ibrahim, do you think that the Electoral Commission is independent?
Yeah, thank you for the question. On personal opinion and of what transpires in our nation, I would with evidence say that the Electoral Commission is actually inclined to some extent. Why is this? I'm going to paint for you a picture, try to show to you how this actually all falls into play. So from the Constitution, actually that's Act 10 of the Constitution, of the drafted Constitution of 1955, we actually see that it's the president that's actually supposed to nominate the chairperson or the chairman of the Electoral Commission. And when this chairman is actually appointed, what actually happens is the approval is from the parliament. What happens today is the president will actually nominate this person who is actually in his favor. Then when the person goes to parliament, because the main importance of the person going to parliament to approve is the parliament can actually see that maybe this person is not credible enough, or in some way will actually incline the electoral commission to some side. But what happens in the parliament of today is, even in the parliament, the biggest people representing the constituencies actually from the ruling party. So what actually happens is, even if someone comes on board that's actually clearly and with all evidence going to incline the EC to some side, what actually happens is they actually approve the person. Because even if opposition tries to deny that this person won't go through, their number is so little to actually cause a difference. So this person is actually going to go through. I'll give an example of Engineer Badu Chigundu. And when I mention that name, obviously, you and me know all the saga and comedy that happened around the 2016 elections, where he was, by then, I think that was his last term. He was trying to escape from the nation and all that big saga around that. But back to my point of the inclination of the Electoral Commission, what actually happens is, in kind of way, the Electoral Commission has by the constitution, it's given power to actually oversee the elections. But what happens is that since this electoral commission is also given limited power, should I say it's given actually flag power, that the constitution is supposed to give the power, but they actually don't actually receive this power. Because what happens is the electoral commission will actually draft that so and so Honorable Chagulan is supposed to be in some area, and then what will actually happen, we are going to see that the police are actually going to come and disrupt the whole environment. So the electoral commission, in such a way, it's going to, the people are going to look at it in such a way that the electoral commission is actually inclined to some party. Because if you tell me that other political parties can actually hold their rallies without interference from the police, but then when it comes to the opposition camps to actually hold their rallies, we actually see the police coming in, disrupting the peace.
Ibrahim, I would like to ask a follow-up question.
Yes.
Someone would say it's because the opposition is not following the regulations that have been put in place. That is why the police keeps on looking for them. That is why you find police in those areas. And they claim that the ruling party, NRM, as its members are during rallies out there with the people, they are following the regulations. So what do you have to say about that? Don't you think the opposition is not following the regulations in place?
Actually, what happens is, to paint such a picture is actually from the media. And as my colleague mentioned earlier, the media is actually suppressed. So what happens is, they will actually choose to actually show that these people are doing this the wrong way, instead of actually showing that maybe a contestant was moving on the road that was actually dedicated for them, that you go this way. But when they decide to go there, what would the police say? That they're actually disrupting the peace of the area. Yet by code, they're actually told to use that road. But what happens for the other party, and the NRM, as you said, even if they actually do their rallies, because from very many occasions, we see them moving through towns with their large numbers of people. They go with big vehicles, people chanting their words and all, but we actually don't see police intervening. So if actually that happens in opposition, the police intervenes in such a way that they are saying they are breaking the law, but when it happens for the other way, they actually do nothing. So what is that showing us? That at the end of the day, what they are doing is they are misleading you. They're actually misleading you into thinking that the police actually intervened because these people are doing wrong, but the same thing is happening in the other party's camp, and nothing is actually being done.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibrahim. That has been our very first segment of the show. So stay tuned, we shall be back after the break, and we shall be diving right into the discussion again to find out what recommendations these guests have for the Electoral Commission.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back after the break. We are back again to another episode of the Inter-University Debate Show, the second segment. Still continuing with our topic, which is the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961 and the 30 years of the Constitution. We had broken off whereby the guests on the show had given us their views and what issues they think are the reason as to why there is lack of credibility in elections. So having discussed that, we'd like to look at the recommendations. But before we get to the recommendations, we'd like to ask ourselves, rather this question goes to Vincent. We'd like to ask Vincent, because he gave us a vivid history of where we came from as a nation to democracy today. We'd like to ask him whether the Constitution, whether you think that the Constitution has lived up to its promises of free, fair, and credible elections.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I'm actually glad to be here back again. So when it comes to the constitution, I'll basically not talk about the first three constitutions, since they basically did not play any part when it comes to elections, since there were almost no elections during their time. But when it comes to the current constitution of the 1995, which assured the people or the citizens of Uganda that they actually have a right to democracy, a right to representation, a right to their freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and then it goes on to paint a picture of a free, fair, transparent, and then a democratic election. We can say that, well, before it was manipulated or before the tampering with it started, we might say that, well, it did its part. Basically, in around 2001, maybe, it did its part. But what then we see in other elections, when multi-party system comes up, and then we see that part of the constitution is now being scrapped off in order to cater for some given individuals that are no longer being catered for. For example, when you look at 2005, where they remove the term limit, which was basically 2 terms, that really basically shows you that the constitution, because the constitution is supposed to be sovereign in a way that nobody is above it. But when it comes to an extent where again it is being manipulated in order to cater for some individuals, then that means it's no longer fair. It's no longer keeping up to its standards. So we see it being manipulated in order to cater for people that have actually already been there for more than the 2 terms. And then on top of that, well, as you may say that, well, this might be something small, we see that Ojikwatako that comes in later, trying to scrap off the age limit where someone wasn't supposed to contest when they're above a certain age of 75 years. But we see it being removed. It actually caused a lot of ruckus in parliament because opposition members definitely saw what this was basically leading to. I mean, this is a country that is supposed to be led by someone, that person goes and then another one comes in. But if you scrap off such an act and you say someone can rule for until their death, that means you're basically turning the government into a monarchy, and you're basically removing the democracy that has been stipulated, or the representation that had been stipulated by the constitution. When it comes to the point of freedom of speech, freedom of expression that was expressed within the constitution, we see that also being neglected in the current times. Well, if I have the freedom of speech, then that means I still have the freedom after my speech. But to an extent where you lose your freedom after your speech, like you're literally losing your freedom because you have used your freedom, then we cannot basically say that the constitution is being upheld, because we see that when it comes to, we are still getting political prisoners. I mean, people who have not done anything, but they are just being arrested because of different political ideologies. So this then goes back to the constitution, because whatever is being done in a country, we are supposed to follow the constitution. So that means if people are arrested without trial just because of their political ideologies, then that basically means that the constitution has failed. It might not have failed in itself, but it is not being upheld, so we take it as its failure.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that view. And moving on to Edward, earlier on you had stated the factors that have led to lack of credibility in the elections today. And you mentioned the EC, you mentioned military involving in civic elections. You mentioned quite a number of factors that have led to lack of credibility. So I'd like you to tell our viewers, what do you think are the recommendations to some of those issues that you highlighted?
Right. Thank you, Sharon, for that. I'm going to do it step by step, but I think allow me start with the generalized perspective of all this. Whereas all these factors have happened in a country like Uganda, people have seen, we appreciate that. The media has seen, every person has seen, and these same people have provided recommendations. We've seen people speak out through platforms like X, Instagram, even physically in newspapers. But now the biggest challenge that Uganda has as a country is that we have freedom, but people or the state never buys into what we tell them. Because Sharon, if someone tells you that please stop involving the military in just simple civic elections, that is a recommendation that they're telling you, and you're not willing to buy into that, trust me, you never have any credible thing that you do within that kind of regard. So the first recommendation would be the government or the state in itself buying into the recommendation that come from people. Electoral observers have spoken out, people have given their views, but we see that the state has not yet bought into these ideas. So if we are to have a fair election running once again, I think the government has got to buy into the recommendations, to sit down and say, yes, people have said the EC is not independent. What do we do? How do we bring back that kind of trust into our people? So once you don't do that, it means you're still running a flawed system. So the first idea is we have, like as a state or the government, it has to buy into the interests or the ideas that people run. Because these things, much as they're allegations, but they're happening in society down there. People are seeing them happening. So the first thing is we have to learn to appreciate, consider, and look into suggestions that come from society. Like, this is feedback, we appreciate that. If the media tells you that we are not being allowed to cover given ideas, we are being brutalized because we are showing the truth that is happening on ground. Army is beating us because we are showing the flawness that is happening within electoral systems, because there were allegations that votes were being rigged at night during the Kaombe by-elections. But we saw the leader of opposition, Honorable, I'm forgetting, Joel Senyonyi, being chased from somewhere because he went to see that. So once the government doesn't give attention to simple things like that, I think that is a weakness. So firstly, the government or the state has got to sit down, analyze. The first thing is to listen to what society is saying, analyze them, and provide workable solutions. Because it's not a matter of spokesperson of police coming up and saying, the other day this and this happened. It's not true. It's not a matter of speaking out. Because society or as individuals, we believe these people can be manipulated. I mean, it's not a matter of police coming to say. People want to see a matter being addressed either through courts of law or through maybe through official media, that may be feedback coming from the state. So the first recommendation is the government has got to sit down and appreciate, analyze, and give feedback, clear feedback, legal feedback, through courts of law and other states, state bodies that can give hopes to citizens. Number two, the government has to understand that it's a matter of election, because this is an obligatory role. I don't think my mom or my grandmother is going to need me or an MP to give her money to go and vote, yet she knows that is the minor thing or the least thing she can do for a free and fair governance that she has to. Likewise, I myself, I don't think I need the government to first give me transport to travel from Mbarara to Hoima Bujumbura to go and vote. Yet I know it is my obligatory role. So there is need for sensitization. Government must show us that citizens, this is your obligatory role. You can do it without being influenced. The biggest thing I need to know is who has contested. I need to know their manifestos. Once the EC, once the government sensitizes or educates people about elections, because right now, many Ugandans, majority Ugandans, think you have to pay them for them to go and vote. That's why I gave you another factor of monetization of politics, of elections, right? So, because all of us have developed that kind of mindset whereby we think elections, we have to be paid to vote for what is best for us, to exercise our rights, that is a weakness that government has got to address. So there is need for active sensitization. Let people know, let everyone know that it is it's your obligation. Just like you wake up in the morning and maybe cleans up yourself, it is your role to go and, because if you don't vote, it all goes back to you. But now what government has done is you see lorries ferrying people. I mean, you're going to see someone telling me, you come and vote, you're going to carry you, give you free transport. Why would you do that? It's my role to vote. Once you bring in those systems, in simple terms, sorry to say, but we are glorifying wrong things. Because we think carrying people to voting areas in itself is good. But either way, it's wrong because you give people a mindset whereby they think they have got to be given transport refund because they are going to vote. That is wrong. So it basically means you're monetizing the whole idea of politics. Government is spending billions of money. Right now, rallies are happening. You find someone who is from central Uganda. Right now, they're in Gulu, they are in Terego, campaigning with His Excellency. Those people have been encouraged to go there. I think that is in itself wrong. Why? Because it paints a bad picture, a wrong picture, but of which wrong picture is being glorified by society. So there is need for active education of a voter. Let a voter know it is my obligation to vote. I don't need any influence. The only influence I have is, come tell me, what have you done for us? What are you going to do for us? What's your manifesto? As simple as that. I don't need your money. Then, lastly, the government has got to know where, how, and what to do during given times. It becomes extremely wrong for me to see a whole barricade, a whole military coming to engage in a by-election, to engage in a member of parliament election. Even if it is a presidential election, I don't think there is need for the army, yet we have the police, right? Because personally, I grew up respecting the army because I thought the army was meant to fight wars, right? So, and I think that same perspective, many people have it down there. Once I see the army, I be fearing anything is going to come up. So once you actively involve the army, why would you bring a tank from Bombo, from Masindi Barracks, to just supervise a simple presidential election? So there is need for government to know when, how, and what to do during elections. There is no need for government to actively involve the military in simple civic elections.
Edward, someone would argue and say that the reason as to why we have police or the military in that area, it's because they anticipate maybe chaos, they anticipate violence, they anticipate a lot of insecurities. So that is why the military may be in those positions in order to ensure that there is peace in the area.
That is true, but I think that same role can be done by the police. Because from my primary school, I know the police has a major role of promoting peace and order, right? So I don't see any reason to why the army has got to do a role that can be performed by the police. Police has got those cars. I mean, we have seen strikes where police is coming up. Trust me, Sharon, many people are willing to see those police cars coming up. But people feel extremely insecure and irritated to see an army tanker coming in for an election. So that's why I told you there is need to know when and what to do during the time. It's okay if you think it is going to be extremely worse, but then the government has got to clearly stipulate the circumstances at which an election is going to be most likely worse. Because I'm going to tell you, an election is going to be worse because of the same flaws in the system. How maybe people have got their complaints that need to be addressed. For example, people are anticipating flaws. Maybe someone told you, yesterday we saw votes being rigged. Yesterday we saw people being afraid to come for an election. It means those are flaws that have happened. So the best idea before even you think of anticipating for all these things, first understand what are people saying. Yesterday there was an election that maybe votes were being rigged. So provide feedback on that. First address a problem before you come and build on a problem. Yeah, so basically that's what I can talk about. There are mainly three factors. There is need for active sensitization of a voter. It is my obligatory role, just like I go to church to pray without a father giving me money to go to church as transport. It's my role, obligatory role. Then two, there is need to minimize on the idea of monetization of politics. Then three, there is need to seize, I can say seize, the idea of involving military in simple, basic civic elections. Yet we have the police, which is fully budgeted for. They have instruments. They have every year they recruit over thousands of policemen. So I think these people can do a role that let us leave the army for worse issues. What are you going to do when you get an attack from rebels? So let us leave civilian things in the hand of civilians. The police is there to help us. So basically that's what I can talk about as feedback or thing that we can do to bring back trust and integrity in our elections.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think I need to add anything to that. That has been very clear. Thank you so much, Edward. And moving on to Joy, I would like to ask, how prepared do you think Ugandans are for the elections next year?
Basically, on that question, I think we have to take everything like in the hands of the Electoral Commission. If a Ugandan is to be prepared, we have to base on the fact that all the insecurities that are then not going to affect Ugandans are going to be done away. Like Eddie was suggesting, all the suggestions that have come on board. When you still see things like voter intimidation then happening, Ugandans are not going to be any ready. Because why would a Ugandan go to a polling station whereby they know they're not safe and secure at the end of the day? When you talk about preparedness of the Ugandans to participate in the election, I think that is already happening, because when they go to update the voters register themselves, that means they are willing to participate in the elections. But at a point in time whereby someone sees they do not have any hope, even if they participate in the election, that means they will not get the end of the day even after updating the voters register. So at a point in time whereby they are also willing to take part, like the willingness they show when they're going to do all these electoral processes stuff, like to participate in rallies, to go ahead and nominate their own candidates. At the end of the day, that means they're already prepared to do everything that is in line with the electoral processes. But a lot of things are hindering the electoral process as a whole, as we had mentioned earlier on. These things need to be put into consideration for Ugandans then to be prepared, I should say fully prepared, to participate in the electoral processes at the end of the day. Things to do with what he was talking about, the whole idea of militarization of the army, things to do with monetization of elections. Last time when we were in the CCG conference and they were questioning about the idea of youth, like being at the back, and we are making noise about the members of parliament being voted, we may come and see how hot the thing is. I think that whole idea does not make sense, because at the end of the day, there is at least someone who has to put a check and a balance to someone they have voted into power to serve them, not a person who's going to be an idol to someone they think already has the power to themselves. Things to do with selfishness, they should be abolished at the end of the day. When people vote someone into power, they expect someone to serve them, not someone to be an idol, not someone to go and idealize someone or calling someone a god at the end of the day. These are things that should be done, things to do with taking out all the insecurities. That is what should be done for the voters at the end of the day to be fully prepared to participate in the election, of which these things are not actually being carried on like fully, because to do with militarization that is still happening right now. Things to do with monetization that have hit like recent instances whereby all these monetizations are taking place. Things to do with media suppression, whereby the media is not even allowed to cover the pain that a Ugandan is facing, and that is what their role is as media, to bring out that pain that a Ugandan is facing, to be brought out to the public, those who are not able to access all that. These are things that should be taken away. For Uganda now to say, I have the freedom, I can participate in a free and fair election. Because if you look at the constitution we're discussing right now, it is a constitution that was built on peace, unity, humanity, and the views of the people, like what they wanted at that time. Of which these are things that have been eroded with the selfish motives of people who want for themselves only, but not thinking for the people who voted for them. Are people who want to stay in power for long, of which this is things to do with the age limit being removed, the term limit being removed. These are amendments that were made in the constitution because of the selfish motives of people who wanted everything for themselves. And now, summarizing the preparedness of Ugandans, theoretically speaking, Ugandans are prepared. If you look at the electoral process, like where it comes from to where it is. Practically speaking, on the harms that are that are facing electoral processes and whatnot. And like we had mentioned earlier, Ugandans are not prepared because they're under intimidation. They do not have hope that even if I go cast my vote, there is going to be change. These are things that are not happening at all. Ugandans have lost hope in all that. So even if I participate, even if I don't participate, what would the change be? There is no change.
Okay, thank you very much, Joy, for that. And moving on to Ibrahim. You mentioned about the Electoral Commission and you stated that it's not independent, clearly highlighting its appointment and the procedure as to how the chairperson is picked. Yes. Then I would like to pose a question to you. Someone would argue that the people that have been brought forth to be appointed, those are people with credible maybe papers, academic papers, that have been in certain positions. They are credible enough to be in that position. So it would not be fair for you to say the people that have been picked would be biased, would be or leaning against a certain party.
Yes, well, so the fact is these people might actually be credible and they have the qualifications for the position. But you notice that even in the Constitution, they gave the provision that the president appoints, then the parliament has to approve. That's even what happens for ministers, that a person can actually have the qualifications, but when you look at this person, will he actually be able to run the Electoral Commission the way it's supposed to? Because if it's a matter of qualification, most of the Ugandans actually do have the qualifications, but we don't go on choosing everyone to actually take up the position. It has to actually be a specific person that is actually looked through. The parliament must oversee the person. Is this person actually not going to be biased in organizing the elections? Is this person going to do the needful? Is this person actually patriotic enough to do what is necessary? Is this strong enough to actually stand up one day and announce that the president has lost this election? And we never see that happen. What happens is these people, yes, are credible, but then they are credible but then chosen by the president, and the parliament is supposed to sieve and actually give us the best there is that is actually going to do the right job that the Electoral Commission needs to do. But in such a scenario where we're actually seeing that these people actually, just like I mentioned earlier, the sieving process now also has holes, that a person chosen just goes through without sieving, without actually seeing if is really the right man for the job. So at the end of the day, yes, the person is credible, but they are not in position to actually do the required job, or they are not in position to actually do the chairman job of the EC, because just like we mentioned, the person has to be neutral, the person has to be willing to stand and announce results the way they are, rather than chairmen that are actually chosen, and then we see them at the end of the day, near the point of announcing elections, people actually want to flee the nation. So why is this happening? Yet we actually thought that this person was actually credible, and then the person could actually do his job. So in that stance, I would say that yes, these people might be they might qualify to actually lead the AC, but the process of sieving them to actually give us the actual person we need is actually faulty. That's how we end up getting these people, and then it affects the whole electoral process.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ibra. The guests today have highlighted the history of elections. They have also highlighted the factors that have led to lack of credibility in the elections, and have also given recommendations. So that has been it for our show, but I would like our guests to give their remarks to our viewers, starting off with Vincent.
Okay, thank you so much, Sharon. To the viewers, basically, when we look at the election, it's not only on the side of the government, but also back to you. If the country is to achieve free, fair and transparent elections, it also still comes back to you. You should also do your part. If the government has failed to do their part, then you can do your part. But at a time where the government, the Constitution, the Electoral Commission do not do their part, and then you, as a voter or as a citizen of Uganda, don't do your part, then we shall not achieve freedom. First off, to show that if you feel like maybe, well, I'm well off, I don't really need to even participate in all this chaos, I don't need to go in for elections, then that means that your voice could have caused a change. Your vote could have caused a change. But since you choose not to use it, then that means the change won't happen. When it comes even to the media suppression, Right now, we are living in the 21st century. We are having a lot of gadgets. If you're on ground, you can record what is happening. Much as the media is down, even if the televisions are down, people use VPNs, you can still share information on what is happening on ground to help increase the transparency even when it is being suppressed. So I have a part to play, you have a part to play, much as the major stakeholder is neglecting their part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Thank you for reminding us that each person has a part to play in this process. Moving on to Edward, your concluding remarks to our viewers.
Right. Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, our viewers. My biggest remark is going to be on idea. I'll just generate some simple story as I conclude up. This was way back. Animals had to convene somewhere for a meeting. These animals had very many challenges affecting them. Man was killing them. Man was disturbing them. So during this convention, an owl, we all know an owl, it seemed to be a fixed bird. It was so busy. So Mr. Hare told an owl, Madam Owl, let's go for the meeting. Madam Owl told Mr. Hare, you know, I'm so busy, I'm even old, I'm weak, I'm tired, I can't go there. But just know, as you go there, my mind, soul, and heart is going to be with you. Whatever you discuss, I will support it. So thank you, can go for the meeting. Now in the meeting they had, as animals, they agreed that one, to stop man from killing us, killing any animal, we are going to sit and agree amongst us, which animal should we surrender? Let us surrender one animal like this, they be killing it for good time as we see a way forward, as we plan on the escape route. All animals agreed, let us kill the owl. So they waited for the owl to speak up and say, no, don't kill me. But since the owl was absent, she never knew what had happened. And the next day, man started killing the owl because that was the idea that they came up with. Why this story is, the biggest challenge in Uganda right now is that the old people, the responsible people, have left elections for the young because maybe they think we are the youth. Right now you see the youth participating in rallies, and some of us youth don't even know where we vote from, don't know, we don't even have IDs to make it clear, right? So we only come to participate because there are rallies, there is money in chaotic stuff. The challenge with this is that once that is done, us the old people, our parents, don't care, they are busy, they are going out for work. So there is no engagement in these ideas. My dad is going to tell you, a man like me going for a rally, I have things to do, I have offices to run. But I think that is wrong. So my call to action to every person out there is, we need to know that an obligation is not exclusive to a given age or a given race. It is about me and you. Because if you don't speak up either way, it's going to affect you. I'm a victim of this whole saga because I've not been voting. For one reason, this time round, I have to run back home and vote. Everything is set, I checked myself, I'm in the register. I'm going to vote. So it's a call to action to us all. Please, let's go and vote. As Vincent has said, use technology wisely. You have your phone, speak up where you can. Record each and everything systematically. Because either way, your voice, your action, your decision is going to be a determinant factor in the system of governance that we are most likely to get. Thank you, viewers.
Thank you very much, Edward. It has been a pleasure having you on the show. Next, Joy, would you give your concluding remarks to our viewers?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity granted. Yeah, so when we're still young, like growing up, they told us they're the future leaders of tomorrow. Things like power belongs to the people. All those things are still echoing in our minds. But even then, we have come to know that the future leaders of tomorrow, we just have to nurture, like people who are going to lead the future. Right now, we are the leaders of today. That is what we are. Everyone here speaking has the ability to be a leader, to lead, because the ideas everyone is giving are such credible that they know what is happening. Yeah, still applies to a person or a person viewing right now. The viewers it's not that you have, for you to be significant in the country, you first have to become an MP. Not everyone can run for being an MP. Not everyone can run for being an LC5 chairperson. Not everyone can run for a position. But you just being there to check the people you are voting for, like to at least throw some criticism to what is not happening, or the ability to exercise your freedom of speech. Though Vincent was highlighting you have freedom of speech when you are speaking, but after speaking, your freedom is taken away. These are things that are done just to intimidate a person. But if you are strong enough, you can surely achieve this. Yeah. So realize that the role of a citizen, participate in an election. That is one. Ed has told you he is going to vote. I think I will also vote. I'm sure I will also vote. Yeah. So just a person participating in an election, you have done your role as a citizen. Just being there to check what the government is doing, or to put some checks and balances here and there, you've done your role as a citizen. Yes. So to the viewers out there, the power belongs to you. You do not know the power you hold. The Constitution has a lot. I didn't know until CCG, the conference that was held, that I have that power. But just know you have a lot of power. The sovereignty is all in people's hands, so there are a lot of manipulation. So if all these are upheld, realize that the viewers themselves, and including us, we have a lot of power, as the Constitution states it, because it advocates for human rights, peace and unity, though they are somehow infringed on, but then at the end of the day, we have to keep them. Yes. So exercise your rights, do your freedom without any infringement on it, and you'll have done your role as a citizen. Simple play. Even if you do not feel like I should run for a position, you can apply some checks and balances to the government to do their services properly, like as they should do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Joy. And lastly, Ibrahim, your closing remarks to our viewers.
Yeah, thank you very much. So actually, I'll start my remarks with a rhetorical question. One day, if we all live to become actually old enough, our grandchildren will ask us, grandmama or grandpapa, what did you do as this nation went astray? So to everyone, the viewers out there, this is a call for nationalism. How is this? Someone will say, I'm just a normal person, but actually your vote does matter. Regardless of people losing hope in the electoral process, still go and cast that vote. To the leaders out there, the judges, we have had issues of the judges actually acknowledging that there are irregularities in the election, but still choose not to have a referendum. So this is a call out to everyone, the judges. You see something wrong, it takes nothing for you to actually say the truth. You will actually go down in history as someone who actually did something good for the nation, rather than those that were actually against the progress of our own nation. The leaders out there, yes, we enjoy all the fruits, we enjoy the money and all, but at the end of the day, what actually matters is our nation. We're actually here for a moment. We don't want to ruin it for the coming generations. So even if you're casting a vote in the parliament, we request you that you actually make those votes, pass those laws that are actually going to push our nation to the forefront, or actually push the nation to grow, rather than actually bringing it down. Because at the end of the day, it's all down to us. I'll end with Karl Marx saying, he said that after the oppression of the oppressed by the capitalists, one day the oppressed will actually cause a revolution to cause the socialist society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our guests have been from Mbarara University of Science and Technology. They have shared their perspective, they have shared their views, and we cannot wait to hear what you have to say in the comment section down below. That has been our show, and I have been your host, Sharon Mukisa. Until next time.